Ferguson.
What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Leinart, 2004 Heisman Trophy winner.
Hey, I'm Zane Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
You're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're watching the Harris Highlight Show.
And you're listening to the Harris Highlight Show. Enjoy it.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Chateau in beautiful Monrovia, California. This is the Harris Highlight Show. Joining us this week is our Ontario Reign play-by-play announcer, Josh Schaefer, our executive producer / college football analyst and college football expert for the night, and also the reader of Lyle Goldstein paragraphs, Brady Klein.
Hi, Brady Klein. I'm reading for the
Blake
part
Harris.
of Lyle Goldstein. Thank you.
Boys, how we doing tonight?
Well, the Kings are on right now on ESPN, and former Reign guy and Kings top prospect Quentin Byfield just scored his first NHL goal with an absolute rocket, bud. Rocket, bud. Welcome to QB's house. Bathrooms down the hall, bud. It was great. Happy to be here.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me, Blake. First time caller, long time listener.
Long time, first time. You know, I'm just real proud of my guys. We're proud of their guys. We're proud of all of our guys. Go Hawaii. Aloha. Means goodbye to Todd Graham.
So now Josh is watching the Kings game currently. I currently have a pursuit on because it's just another day in Los Angeles. Brady, What do you got on?
Whoa. Just to be clear, it's not technically a pursuit unless it's declared a pursuit. Just to be clear.
That's true.
Is it like that motorcycle one from last week, or
the motorcycle one that was literally 2 minutes from my front door? Yes, Brady, it is.
So we were going to actually have the pursuit live on the show and actually just give our commentary during it. But instead, we'll talk some college football, and I'll look at the TV every now and then and provide commentary. Currently, it is an LAPD pursuit of a burglary suspect going through El Monte doing 109 on the 10.
Oh, that's not far from you.
No, it's not.
It's not that far from me either.
It's my neck of the woods. All right, guys. So last week, we talked about pretty much everything that's been happening recently in college football. We teased it for this show. We're going to be talking about...
By the way, to answer your question, I'm watching Phineas and Ferb.
That's a great choice.
See?
So we're going to be talking...
Josh.
We're going to... Josh
Look,
doesn't
Josh.
want to look.
Oh, he's Perry the platypus.
So we're going to be talking about coaches. We're going to be talking about all the latest coaching hires. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch. So we're going to be talking about our personal favorite hires, probably the best hires, some of the worst hires, some underrated hires. But if there's any coaches that you want to hear our thoughts on, because, I mean, it's like the transfer portal. There's been essentially, I mean, I have the list in front of me. I think 25 FBS programs that have gotten a new head coach this offseason. So obviously we can't get to every head coach. Condolences to Akron fans, New Mexico State fans, Temple fans, UMass fans, Troy fans. We won't get to talk about you guys, but for those of you out there who have are a fan of a team of relevance, let us know about a coach you want to hear our thoughts on, and we'll provide those. But we're going to be talking about the big ones, and we're excited because we kind of teased it last week. Josh teased it, but Grandmaster Roast General Josh Schaefer will be taking the stage very shortly to provide his thoughts on a few major hires. Now, Josh has pretty much been bottling up thoughts on a certain hire for about, I think, 6 weeks now, 7 weeks, because we just haven't had a chance to talk about it. So without further ado, let's start with that because, I mean, it's arguably the biggest coaching hire so far. And of course, that's Don Brown, the former Arizona defensive coordinator, becoming the head coach at UMass. So Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Don Brown is man.
Like, that's amazing.
This is gonna no. I've actually got thoughts on this. Believe it or not, you tried to stump me, Blake. Look at this. That's what I thought. So Don Brown is a fraud. Basically, he went to Michigan and was like, "Get ready for the best defense you've ever seen in your life," and that was a lie. as Maury would say. He would bring Don Brown on the show and be like, the lie detector determined that was a lie. And then all this time, Jim Harbaugh has been like, dude, we have a good defense. And like the one kid in the I think I got my swagger back YouTube video. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Jim Harbaugh's been saying, we have a good offense. And they also have a good defense too. And Don Brown is not the reason why. But he went to U of A. He did not have much success there either. But I kind of like Don Brown. He brings the energy levels. He was awesome on All or Nothing. So is he a fraud as a defensive coordinator at Michigan? Maybe. But is he going to be good at UMass? Also probably not. But I'm rooting for him. And I'm also rooting for our guy, Jim Mora at UConn. I didn't even realize that until today. I completely forgot that was a thing. So get ready. UConn playoff team in 3 years.
All right. So just like everyone expected, Don Brown, Jim Mora, the discussion. So we'll start off with good old Lincoln Riley. Brady, after Josh goes, you can provide Lyle Goldstein's thoughts as our fellow Lyle guy for the night. Brady's actually not going to be sharing any of his thoughts. His job is to share Lyle's thoughts. So he'll be doing that. So Josh, we'll throw it to you about Lincoln Riley. I guess first things first. Can
I add one piece of my own input before?
Always, of course. Feel free to.
My favorite coaching move is Jeff to the USFL.
Yes.
Really pumped to see what he can do there. Really pumped.
God. All right. So Josh, we'll throw it to you. We can start off with, once Clay Helton got fired, who were you thinking was going to be the head coach of USC? Just because not many people really had Lincoln Riley pinned there. 2, when the rumors started stirring in regards to Lincoln Riley. And 3, just as now you've had, like I said, 6-7 weeks to let it kind of sit, go through your system, experience what life is like with Lincoln Riley as the head coach, what the first month is like, your overall thoughts from a USC fan's perspective, and we'll add our thoughts from a Pac-12 fan's perspective. So, Brady, I believe you can queue up an episode of Phineas and Ferb. I think they're 12-minute episodes. So you might want to watch
they're
about
like
3 or
22
4
minutes, but they're just split in half,
Okay. So Brady, you might want to schedule about 5. But Josh, yeah, all those different ways. You can start from the bottom and work your way to the top.
Actually, I think I've got more to say about a different hire.
You have 11 seconds
we know.
left, Josh.
Oh no. Look, I at first I think I had said this on the show. I really wanted it to be Luke Fickell. I thought that he would have been the absolute perfect fit for USC. He was hired by Mike Bohn at Cincinnati. I thought that that's where USC was going to go. There were also some Campbell predictions. I thought one that got thrown out that was not as surprising as some people might think, but I thought Mario Cristobal would be a great hire. I think that USC could have landed Mario Cristobal if they wanted, but they went bigger and better and said, forget about all these coaches that would be a good fit. Let's go get one of the best coaches in college football in Lincoln Riley. So I was very surprised. I think that it's a great fit. I think that it's exactly what USC needs, not just from a team standpoint, but from a program standpoint. And this is where either people are going to 100% disagree or agree with me. This is so absolutely massive for the entire Pac-12 conference. I mean, it's huge. And I mean, think about it. Like, these last couple of years, can you name one marquee coach in the Pac-12? Herm, I don't think counts. Herm Edwards was a name. He was brought to ASU.
He was like a celebrity, but
yeah, it was almost like it was a flashy hire. Was it simple? And what has Herm done at ASU? He brought him back a little bit in the same way that maybe Bobby Hurley made ASU relevant, but it doesn't mean there's been any legitimate strides. But that's a different topic. Like, Herm Edwards is an okay hire, right? Mario Cristobal, I think that he's a good coach. I think he's a very good coach, and Miami pried him away from Oregon. But legitimately, compared to the Big Ten, compared to the SEC, are there any real marquee coaches in the Pac-12 right now? Now there is. And now not only is that going to benefit USC, and not only is Lincoln Riley going to recruit 10 times better than he did even at Oklahoma when Oklahoma was in its prime under him, but I think this is big for the Pac-12 because USC is going to take all the best guys from the West Coast. They're going to start getting guys from the East Coast. Where are the guys that don't go to USC? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to all the other Pac-12 schools. So, I mean, you look back to when USC in in like the 2000s era with Bush and Leinart and Palmer and everybody after them when Pete Carroll was a head coach. You look at where the Pac-12 was at that time, UCLA was ranked. Oregon was starting to be ranked. Cal was making a push. Washington was around here and there. Like, it was better for the whole Pac-12, including ASU and U of A. Like, everyone was relevant at that time. And then suddenly, once Pete Carroll left, when USC's not at the front, then everybody else has their years, but there hasn't been any legitimate dominance among anybody in the Pac-12. And the reason why is USC's that marquee program. So USC is going to be the team that's on national television all the time. So now, you know who's not playing on Pac-12 network anymore? USC. And whenever anybody in the Pac-12 plays USC, you're not on Pac-12 network that week. You're on national television. That's a huge recruiting pitch, not just for USC, but for UCLA, Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, Utah. Everybody can guarantee, hey, you're going to be playing on national television every year. Because not only are you still going to play schools like Oregon and whoever else is good in the Pac-12, but you're going to be playing against Lincoln Riley on national television. And that's going to make the rest of the conference better. And like, you either agree or you don't, but like the fact of the matter is that college football is better collectively as a sport when Notre Dame's good, when Texas is good, when USC is good. And that's why this is so good for the Pac-12. Beyond that, I think this is exactly what USC needs to not only win games and become relevant and compete with the rest of the other Power Five or the other Power Five conferences, but they're going to fill the venue, like a newly renovated venue. They're going to fill it up. And that's huge for USC. And I think USC's
football stadium.
Oh, that's right. It's a racetrack now. Thanks, Brady and race car drivers. But yeah, I think it's huge for USC. I was very surprised. I thought USC was actually going to go out and make a big time hire. I didn't think it was going to be the single best hire they could have made, not named Nick Saban. Like, honestly, as a college football fan, I probably at this point for my program, regardless of who I'm a fan of, if I needed a program to make a quick turnaround, I'm probably not getting Nick Saban. Who else would I want? I don't know if I'd want Dabo. I think I'd legitimately want Lincoln Riley. Yeah. He's young. He's offensive minded. He has a track record of not just producing with Oklahoma. Of course, he didn't get over the edge at Oklahoma. He couldn't get that last step of winning a national championship, but he had players win the Heisman. He put players in the draft. So that's what I think USC needs right now, and the Pac-12 needs, is they need somebody that's going to push them over the edge and make them collectively better, and a turning point for not just the program, but for the Pac-12. And I think that's what Lincoln Riley is.
Brady, do you want to share Lyle's thoughts on Lincoln Riley?
Of course.
Not your thoughts.
Lyle's thoughts. How do I get into like a Lyle state of mind? Like,
gotta have a PB&J, get some milk. Get a bowl of cereal with no milk, and that's about it.
Sounds about right. See, the thing is, there are. This is my opinion, not Lyle's. Speaking for me on this point, there are so many of these coaching hires that at the time were like, "Oh, this is really good." 3 years from now, that coach will be gone, right? I say a lot of them. Realistically, whether they're leaving or getting taken away by another school, it's so tough to do, especially in college, because there is always another job, right? In the NFL, there are 32 of those jobs. College is what, 160 something, 140, 30, whatever it is, mixing up football and basketball, but there's always another job. So there's an easier way to work your way back up, I think. But for these top tier hires, I think it's pretty cool to see the guys like Lincoln make their way to a program like USC. Not saying Oklahoma was a slouch by any means, but like Josh said, this is a perfect match for him. Lyle says this is pretty much a slam dunk of a hire. It's the type of guy that USC needs to return to prominence, and he's already started with some huge recruits and transfers committing to USC. And they're still waiting on the great white buffalo, but that should happen here in the next, still has to be 24 hours or so.
See, I thought it was
be
today.
soon.
Like, I thought it was the 27th.
28th.
28th.
Mm-hmm.
Was that all Lyle said in his like novel.
No, Lyle ended
No.
with some huge recruits and transfer community SC, and I added the humor to it, the Great White Buffalo.
You're funny.
That sounds like something Lyle would say.
Yeah.
The one thing that I just wanted to briefly add, we already knew that pretty much for the most part, the coaching staff at a program. I mean, it seems like nowadays, like unless it's truly Alabama, just because of the name and what they've done the last 15 years, it really seems like the name and the prestige of the school is like bottom of what's important now within college football. Because nowadays, coaching staff's like number one, where you can potentially get NIL deals, a whole bunch of other stuff. So the prestige of the school like no longer is a thing. Like I said, we already knew that a coaching staff is pretty strong in regards to the recruiting game. But we've seen just in the last month, literally how many players go to a program solely because of the head coach. I mean, so many players were committed to Oklahoma because of Lincoln Riley. Now they've decommitted, gone to USC because of Lincoln Riley, and a bunch of other recruits who, probably didn't have USC in their top 2 or 3. All of a sudden, Lincoln Riley's there and they want to go. So, I mean, it just goes to show where nowadays, I mean, I think USC still would have done, a great job if they would have hired Mario Cristobal, Luke Fickell, some of these other guys that they were attached to, but I don't think that it would have had as much of an impact as Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams would not be going to USC, I don't think, if Luke Fickell was there. I don't think all these other guys, all these, 5-star recruits, I don't think they'd be committing if Luke Fickell was there. They might, considering it's an upgrade over Clay Helton, but I've just learned in this past month that, a coaching staff literally is one of the biggest. I mean, it's the most important thing at this point now, regardless of who you got. So it just goes to show that I think USC would have been fine, with whoever they would have hired. But like Josh said, the best guy not named Nick Saban, again, Dabo Swinney, you can make the case would be the next best option. But again, is Dabo Swinney recruiting to USC like Lincoln Riley would? I mean, it literally was the dream scenario for USC, and they, Lincoln Riley came with a price considering $100+ million private jet. They're paying for his house here in Oklahoma.
Who cares if you can afford it though?
Oh, well, yeah, that's probably courtesy of 4 or 5 boosters that's covering all that.
It's probably the boosters plane.
Well, and kind of going off of what you said, Blake, it's like, look at all of those guys that USC is now landing, like recruits wise, transfers wise. These are all guys that USC was in the mix for. And then Oklahoma stole them away or somebody else stole them away. That's like the kicker for USC is it's like, hey, like you kind of already considered us already. Cool. The coach you wanted to play for. Like, how's that? And then it's like, this is what's going to completely trigger Oklahoma fans. It ain't Norman, bro. Like, my favorite part about all this, other than the fact that it's like the Pac-12 is going to be super relevant now, just collectively, is how salty Big 12 fans are. I just think it's incredible because it's like, look, Oklahoma, one of the top programs of all time, but it still doesn't have the draw that USC does. Just like in the same way, I've got friends who are all Oregon grads that were telling me Cristobal will never go to USC. He's not going to leave. Yes, like Oregon's great. Like Eugene's a cool place. It's not Miami. It's not Miami Hurricanes football. Just like Oklahoma's not USC. And that's the draw that it's going to be. And it's like Lincoln didn't have to, quote unquote, build anything at Oklahoma because obviously Stoops was there. He stepped in and continued doing what he was doing. But he's going to do all of that at USC and then some because it's the entertainment capital of the world, especially with the NIL stuff. So it's all these other things that are going to go into the recruiting and stuff like that. So that's why I think it's just such a win for USC, but also for Lincoln Riley, is that you already had what I think a lot of people would consider one of the top jobs in football, like a dream job scenario. And USC just made all of that better. Plus they're paying you with a blank check. So,
right.
I think if you look at overarching, I'm not going to count Chip Kelly, but overarching football in Southern California and Los Angeles right now, look at the Chargers, look at the Rams, look at USC, and look at the head coaches. What do they all have in common? They're all this younger, new breed, West Coast, fun, good looking, all this, you want to go play for these guys. And I think NFL level and college level, that says leaps and bounds more than, all right, hey, the team's getting back on track. Things can turn around pretty quickly. And I think the head coaches the obvious starting point. And I think for all three of those teams, Rams, Chargers, and we'll go USC, I think they're in great spots for it.
I was also one of those Pac-12 USC fans, like LA guys, that did not expect USC to win 10 or 11 games next year. Not in a million years. I was thinking 8, give Lincoln some time, but with the transfers that they're bringing in, which is a story for another show, we're going to do a transfer show, but that's something that I did not expect, and I think SC's pushing being a legitimate top 15 team in the country now, just with the transfers they're adding in.
Guys, we have some bad news.
What?
The chopper lost him.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So he's out there. Roman Omani somewhere, and the chopper lost him. So
really quickly, we're on this USC talk right now. One of my favorite things that's happened to me in the last, we'll call it week and a half, is one of my good friends, not Josh, one of my other good friends is a USC fan. We all know who he is. Good old Rogan. So what he does is every day in a group chat we have, he sends this photo.
Yes. Oh, it's Caleb. It's Caleb from Big Mouth.
Yes. Trying to prompt today's the day USC is going to announce. And the funniest thing I can do is mess with him. Is I just sent him that photo, and he is, did that happen? What is it happening tonight? Who was the source? Blake or Josh? Lyle is the wild card. It could have been him, but I'd expect it to be Blake or Josh. So he's frantic. So it's fun to mess with USC fans. Just saying.
That it is.
Hey,
that
fight on emoji.
So, best hire of the offseason. It's going to be exciting to see. Hopefully, it turns the Pac-12 around because they desperately need help. But let's kind of stay on this whole carousel right here of the coaching hires. And let's go over to Oklahoma now and talk about who they got. Now, for losing Lincoln Riley, I mean, there's only so many, coaches that you can come even close to maybe even. I mean, it's already a loss. But overall, I thought Oklahoma did a great job. They somehow were able to pry Brent Venables away from Clemson after over a decade being their defensive coordinator. He does have ties to Oklahoma. He was there in the late 90s, early 2000s when Oklahoma was a powerhouse. So he goes back. And again, it sucks losing Lincoln Riley, but you add arguably one of the top defensive mind coaches in all of college football to a team and, conference for 2 years that needs defense. I thought this was good of a hire as Oklahoma could make given the circumstances that Lincoln Riley literally just said, I'm out. So what are you guys' thoughts on Oklahoma bringing in Brent Venables from Clemson?
Perfect. I think it's a perfect hire. And this is one where I'm still kind of on, like I said, my initial thought for USC was they'll be better. They will be significantly better. Are they going to be a legitimate playoff team? Absolutely not. And now I'm starting to think, all right, with the guys that he's bringing in, with the recruiting that Lincoln Riley's done in a couple weeks, in about a month, insane, right? And I think USC's actually going to be a pretty good team next year. OU, I think, is a good team. I don't think you're going to have that immediate, they're not going to drop off at all. But in the long run, I think this is such a good hire. And I'm interested to see offensively what Oklahoma looks like, because that's where a lot of the recruiting I think is going to need to be done moving forward with Venables. First of all, let me actually just say I cannot believe it took Venables this long to get a head coaching job and for someone to finally pry him away from Clemson, because he's a legitimate college football head coach. So I think it's a great hire. And think about it, Oklahoma hasn't had a great defense under Lincoln Riley, under Bob Stoops. And there were times when, all right, the defense is supposed to be better this year and then wasn't, and then would fly under the radar and was actually pretty good. I think they're going to be the best defense in the Big 12 in the next couple of years by a long shot. So I think it's a really good hire. I think Oklahoma's not going to drop off too much, but I think it's going to take a couple years for them to get back to a legitimate playoff contender.
They're going to have the best defense in the Big 12, and then the following season, they're going to have the 6th best defense in the SEC. That's what's going to happen.
Yes.
I think with Brent Venables, I think he was in a situation where being at one of the top programs in the country, being the defensive coordinator, I think he had the mindset, I'm going to stay here until my guess was he had it in his mind for years until the Oklahoma job opens up. I think that was his dream job. Like I said, he was back there 20 years ago. I think that was his dream job. And he pretty much said, I'm going to stick it until Lincoln Riley eventually leaves, which he figured would be in a year now. So I was shocked it took, a decade, or like I said, 11, 12 years, however long it was. But again, I mean, the fact that you lose one of the top coaches in all of college football and you're able to replace him with probably the best guy that has no head coaching experience. At least I don't think he does, unless he was at a smaller program, like major FBS head coaching experience. Brady, did Lyle have anything on Venables in his novella?
Yes, and good word, Blake. And in Lyle's
I think a
novella,
novella, though, is actually like a Spanish soap opera, which I should know. I don't think it's actually like a book. So
Yeah, isn't it a shorter novel? You're thinking of a telenovela, aren't you?
Oh, telenovela.
It's a
Telenovela is
short
a soap-
novel or long short story.
Okay.
long short story. It's like a small boulder the size of a big boulder, the size of a small boulder.
There you go.
Yes, that's exactly what
You
it
seen
is.
that tweet? It's awesome. So in Lyle's story, a novella, a short novel or story, he says Venables, the sense seems, at least to me, says Lyle, to be Oklahoma is now going to totally fall off, and I don't see it like that. I think they'll be totally fine. He's already been recruiting at the highest level for years at Clemson. Those are Lyle's words. And I agree with Lyle. I think he was the pre-Lincoln Riley leaving, right? I think no matter what, I think Venables was the hottest commodity for a head coaching job in the last few years. And this year more specifically because there were a lot of openings and it was a perfect fit for him, the perfect time. Yes, Clemson didn't have a great year. They finished really strong, but track record shows he'll be just fine. I think he's going to be I think he'll be the best first-year head coach we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, like I said, it's like, out of all the potential options, you can make the case, he's the best first option with, no real head coaching experience. Again, I don't know if he was somewhere low, like in the group of 5 before that, but he's going to be fantastic. Oklahoma, they got a great option, and they've still been killing it. They've had some guys that have left, like Caleb Williams, Mario Williams, a few other guys, but they're still killing it in the recruiting game. They're still likely going to have Dylan Gabriel unless Jackson Dart comes in and Dylan Gabriel says, I'm out. So
I don't see
Oklahoma is going to be in a good position moving forward. Guys, there's a few more names that, we can kind of go in depth, give our thoughts on. And then after that, I'm going to list off maybe like 10 different names where we can kind of give like a quick, rapid 20, 30 second just reaction to them, because I'm sure a lot of people, they want to hear their thoughts on certain coaches. We talked, last week, we'll give our thoughts on like the Virginia Tech moves. There's been a bunch of schools, Washington made a new move. So a lot to get to, but let's move on now, because I know Lyle had a lot to say about this one. We'll start with Brian Kelly going from Notre Dame to LSU. Brady, I actually will start with Lyle's thoughts, our in-house Notre Dame fan. I want to hear what Lyle had to say about Brian Kelly moving on to LSU, because just like with Josh and Lincoln Riley, we never really got to hear Lyle's thoughts on, his team's head coach leaving for LSU. So what did our dearest Lyle have to say about the move?
Dearest Lyle, I write to you today in logging of squirrel oils and fur. What did Captain Andrew Luck, R.I.P. About which one? There's so many things Lyle sent. Brian Kelly, here we go. Lyle's, this is not a novella, this is a full ass story. Here we go. Quote Lyle Goldstein. Brian Kelly, : from a football perspective, I get it. There's only a certain level you can recruit at Notre Dame. Academic standards make it tough. He's accomplished just about everything he could there, so I understand moving to the SEC with the idea of getting bigger recruits and trying to elevate himself and their program, especially with the expanded college football playoff coming. But it is still going to come down to beating Saban, which no one can do consistently. But he's still a complete meme since moving out there, and I didn't love how he only took about 90 seconds to address his Notre Dame team before leaving. And that was said in an American accent not some fake Southern accent that Brian Kelly's doing down at LSU. Go Tigers. Those are Lyle's words.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when you really think about it, when I heard this, stat, I was pretty much blown away by it. But I think it's the last 3 head coaches at at LSU have all won national championships. Like the last 3 head coaches. So obviously, when you go to LSU, you're going to win. Brian Kelly is yet, to win the big one. He had a lot of success at Notre Dame. I think is the most successful head coach in Notre Dame. But it's an interesting one because he goes to a program where he doesn't really have any ties to Louisiana, doesn't have any ties to LSU. You can argue that the head coach of Notre Dame is one of the 5 best head coaching gigs to have in all of college football. But, he sees LSU as a new challenge, a new journey. He thinks that he's going to be able to win a national championship there where he couldn't win one at, Notre Dame. I think it's still a fine move on his part. Obviously, the way he handled the whole thing, I thought was awful. The whole addressing the team in like 2 minutes, I thought was awful. And the way he's been acting at LSU, the whole thing with like the Southern accent, that video with him and the quarterback recruit was just cringe. So I thought the whole way he's handled the situation has been poor. But from a coaching perspective, I think it's a good hire for LSU. Because again, based on who's out there, I don't really know who would have been an upgrade. It's just interesting. You don't often see guys go, willingly from a top tier program to a top tier program. The Lincoln Riley one made a little sense because it's Norman to Los Angeles. It's the prestige of USC. I mean, going from Notre Dame to LSU, I'm sure both cities are nice to live in, but it's not like one's an upgrade over the other. So, still kind of confusing, but again, I guess as a head coach, maybe you want a brand new challenge. Maybe you want to take on, the daunting task of being in the SEC. So props to him for wanting to do that. I'm still shocked he left, a pretty solid area. And I think this was like a few weeks after he literally said, someone asked him, like, are you ever going to leave Notre Dame? And he said, well, yeah, unless someone pays me $500 million, like some fairy comes and gives me $500 million. Now, a fairy did come and give him $100 million, but I did think it was a little, again, kind of poor taste that he said that like 3 weeks prior to Bounty because he had to have known. He had to have some idea that there was the chance that he'd go to another program at some point. So who knows? We'll see. But Brian Kelly's down in Baton Rouge, and he's gonna have a Southern accent moving forward.
Yeah, this is a pretty lateral move for me.
What accent was that you just said that with, Blake?
Baton Rouge.
Combos.
Yeah, combo.
He likes the combo
It's
meal.
just fun to say Baton Rouge.
Combos
French?
and the Holiday Inn cinnamon roll breakfast.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, this is a pretty lateral move, I think. And I agree with Lyle. Like from a football standpoint, I get it. I think that it's an interesting move. I will say, I think that it has been very shady. I agree with Blake. I think a lot of these Brian Kelly things have been very, very shady. Beyond shady, it's weird, man. It's very weird. I think the whole dancing thing, the accent thing's been weird. And then he hopped on that one broadcast and just openly talked about it. And then in the process of talking about this accent, he said that people from Boston don't have accents. I know you're from Boston, but have you ever been there? Like, I just don't understand. And there's no way he did that on purpose as like a joke. Like, oh, Boston people don't have accents. No, he meant that. So I just think it's weird, but I think it's a great hire for LSU. It's definitely a very out of the box hire, but I think it's a great move for LSU and good for Notre Dame. I think they responded pretty well.
Yeah, speaking of Notre Dame, we'll flip to that. So they turned to Marcus Freeman, their defensive coordinator, who I think was only their defensive coordinator for one season. I believe he came over from Cincinnati. He was their defensive coordinator. So again, this is Notre Dame, who in my opinion is a top 5, maybe even you can make the case top 3 head coaching gig in all of college football. They opt to stay in-house, go with Marcus Freeman. That seems to be like the popular move nowadays with certain programs because these coaches have such strong relationships with the players. It seems like all the players were advocating for Marcus Freeman. We'll see what he can do as a head coach, but what are your thoughts on Notre Dame, who they essentially could have had anyone they would have wanted? I'm sure a lot of coaches would have liked to go and become their head coach. What are your thoughts on the Irish staying in-house and giving it to Marcus Freeman, who doesn't have any head coaching experience.
Let me tell you this before we get to what Lyle had to say. The confidence of announcing this hire so quickly is exactly what Notre Dame needed. To say, oh, Kelly left, boom, Freeman. Like, I think that's awesome. I think it's great for him. The fan base clearly likes him. Most importantly, the program and the players in the program, the coaches clearly like him. Feeding off a short round comment, Marcus Freeman is cool, and Notre Dame needed cool. Couldn't agree more. I think he's qualified. I do think that it was a hire that me, as not a Notre Dame fan, but someone who follows Notre Dame pretty closely, obviously given the USC Notre Dame rivalry, and Lyle, of course, like, I think it's a good hire. I know that we have a friend collectively, and this person said it's the greatest hire in Notre Dame football history. I disagree, but I think it's a good hire, and I think it's something Notre Dame needed. So I'm interested to see what he does for the Irish. I don't necessarily think it's a slam dunk hire. I think it's a good one, and I'm interested to see what happens.
When they brought Freeman over from Cincinnati, they basically said from day one, he's in place to be our next head coach.
They just didn't think it'd be within a year.
No, they didn't think it'd be within a year. They think, 3 to 5 years. That's a little more realistic.
Right.
But from day one, they're like, yeah, this guy's our next head coach. And they were pretty open about that too. But like you said, Blake, they didn't think it'd be within the first, 10 months, 11 months, a year, whatever it ended up being. So that's it's kind of cool to see. I really like the move. And like Josh said, announcing it immediately cured any turmoil that could have been. Yeah. It made them look like the good side compared to Brian Kelly, who's down there hooting and scooting and hollering, whatever he's doing down there with the crawdads, and LSU doing whatever he's doing.
Baton Rouge.
With Baton Rouge. With his Boston accent. Oh, yeah. Whatever.
Oh, yeah, some Dunkin' Donuts.
I'll show my face with Pepperidge Farms.
No.
The car in the yard, whatever. Anyways, I like it. I really like the Marcus Freeman move. I like Brian Kelly. Do what you got to do, dude. If you aren't happy at Notre Dame, one of the top 3-5 programs in college football, you're going to another top 7-10 program in college football. Hopefully, you can get it there. Lyle, do you want me to read Lyle's Marcus Freeman note here? Is this where we're bringing this in, or what?
I think this was a longer one, so you can kind of like just speed.
It is.
We'll get to a few others.
I won't read it cinematically like I have the other ones. Here's what Lyle said about Marcus Freeman. Okay, Marcus Freeman, parentheses, this one obviously will be a longer text. He prefaced that, so get ready, friends. Josh, you might want to put on an episode of Phineas and Ferb. Anyways, first off, I personally just don't care that much about him losing that New Year's Six game, since I just don't think it holds the same weight anymore, even though they lost in a really bad fashion, and it was only his first game. They didn't have their two best players either. Bro, there were Notre Dame fans on Twitter that day saying, fire Marcus Freeman. That's kind of crazy. Anyway, I think it's a really great hire. In-house guy, which is not something they usually do, but it's clear from being there less than a season how they loved and respected he is by all of his players, and the way they outcried for him to be the head coach, recruits included. And the video Notre Dame tweeted of how hyped the players were when they told the team and he came running into the locker room. And I think he's going to bring a style to Notre Dame a lot of coaches haven't had in the past. Guys like Brian Kelly and Charlie Weiss were kind of boring without much personality. Freeman is a much younger guy, a player's coach, and I think he brings a ton of passion and energy to this team. And in terms of judgment, I'm not going to start judging him until game 2 of next year. Game 2, Lyle. Really?
I still think that's early.
It's really early. It's his third career game as a head coach. In terms of judgment, I'm not going to start judging him until game 2 of next year. That's when my assessment will start. To be asked to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State, to beat that Ohio State team with CJ, Trayvon, and JSN just is not realistic. And it's very.
Yeah, I was going to say, who are they playing in week 1? Because he probably
they play at Ohio State.
Annihilated, yeah. So his first game as coach is going to be a blown 30-point lead, and his second game as coach is going to be a 30-point loss in Columbus. But hey, Lyle, you can start judging it when they play the Marshall Thundering Herd on a Saturday, September 10th.
Whoa. No more Grant Wells.
No,
Notre
no more
Dame's
Grant
got
Wells.
it.
He's at Virginia Tech.
Yikes.
Apparently. Guys, so we're going to spend the next 10 minutes or so. We're going to be going over, again, some notable ones, giving quick thoughts, people's comments, asking about coaching decisions, giving our thoughts on that. And then for the last 5 minutes, we'll turn to Josh when he goes into full roast master general Josh Schaefer to wrap it up with not a coaching move that you're thinking of. I'll say that. I'll give it a tease. Not a coaching move you're thinking of that Josh is going to completely go off on. So stay tuned in the next 10 minutes for that.
He teased it last week too.
Yeah, a double tease.
Double tease.
A double tease.
Full
All right, guys.
on double whammy, double doink.
We have a super
Josh
chat from
is
our
a
man
tease.
Connor, and he says Chip Kelly pulled an updated version of the Bobby Petrino goodbye with that text to his players. Does he have the neck brace on while this is going down? Also, you talked about both. Which will have a better first season, Tony Elliott at Virginia or Brent Pry at Virginia Tech? So these are two good ones that we can briefly, share our quick thoughts on, because these are some interesting ones. We talked about Clemson losing their top defensive coordinator, but Clemson also lost their offensive coordinator in Tony Elliott. He goes to Virginia, who Virginia this past season had one of the best offenses in all of college football. Brennan Armstrong is going to be back next season. So you're taking a really, smart offensive mind in Tony Elliott. You're adding him to Virginia. And then Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. I believe he was the Penn State defensive coordinator last year, if I got that correctly. And I remember I was talking with Connor about this. I think he has previous ties to Virginia Tech. He was a coach there, I think, years back. So they're getting a guy, and apparently he's been, killing it in the recruiting game. A lot of players want to come and play for him. He was highly respected when he was at Penn State. So both Virginia programs going in interesting, different directions. But who do you think has the better first season as the head coach at Virginia and Virginia Tech?
I'll say I think that they're both really good hires. But the one that stands out to me so quickly is the Tony Elliott hire. But again, kind of like the last point you made was what Pry's already done at Virginia Tech. And I think that's kind of been notable up to this point. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'll go with my gut and say Tony Elliott, just because that's the first one that jumped out to me. But I think both of them are good hires. And I think that makes the rivalry a little bit more interesting, especially these next couple of years, those development years, when they're trying to get each program where they want it to be, and then kind of see where the two teams are, because I think that could be kind of a little bit of an arms race.
This one was tough for me because I looked at, almost the what have you done for me lately aspect of these two teams, and neither team has really done a whole lot lately. So is one really in a better place than the other? They're still, competing with recruits to North Carolina. If they're really good, they're going to go to Clemson, whatever it may be. So in this conference, it's tough to pull recruits to schools like this. So I don't really know which one will have a better first season. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with Tony Elliott at Virginia, purely because their basketball coach is Tony Bennett. So their two head coaches are Tony and Tony.
Except this one's not a singer.
This is true.
Tony Elliott sounds like he could be like a jazz singer, though. I will say that. I looked it up. So Brent Pry, he was at Virginia Tech a lot longer back than I thought. 1995 through 1997, he was a defensive graduate assistant. And I guess this past season, which I did not know, he won the Broyles Award at Penn State. Actually, no, he was the nominee. I think it was someone from Michigan was the Broyles Award winner. He was a nominee, though, this past season. So I like both moves, but like these guys said, I might give the slight edge to Tony Elliott. But if anyone's going to turn around Virginia Tech, and by turning around, I mean maybe going back to being like a 9-10 win team, I think Brent Pry can definitely do it. Here's one, guys. Now, Brady, you're going to have to get Lyle's messages out, because I believe he shared his thoughts on this one. Thoughts on Billy Napier going to Florida? Now, this is quite the jump because he goes from Louisiana to Florida. That's a big task. I mean, that is a daunting task going from a team like Louisiana to a team like Florida. But we saw what Napier did with that Louisiana program. He turned them into one of the best group of 5 schools in all of college football. But there isn't a job that's been under more scrutiny since Urban Meyer left than the Florida gig. So he's got a lot of pressure coming his way. And do you guys think he'll be able to meet the expectations that come with it?
Well, I'm excited to watch. Obviously Billy Napier is an ASU guy, Go State, but he was a guy that when he left and then, he ends up at Louisiana and you root for him and then you kind of see that he's doing some big things. This was a move that I was very surprised to see. I don't totally hate it though. I'm intrigued to see what happens. I just think that that's a massive jump going from a group of 5 school to such a big time program. And again, like you could say the same thing at face value, on paper, Cincinnati's a group of 5 and I wanted him to go to USC before the whole Lincoln Riley thing. And I think that a lot of other people thought, oh, I would like to have him at my program too. It's different when Cincinnati makes the playoff, Louisiana was never close to making the playoff. They were just a very respectable group of 5 school that could probably hang with a Power 5 team in a bowl game, right? But I just don't think he had a lot of time at Louisiana to build up the program the way that Fickell did at Cincinnati. But I still think he's a good coach. I think that this is a very quick hire. So we'll see what happens there. I'm interested. I just think that it's a big jump.
I agree with that it's a big jump, but I think Billy Napier is a guy that can do it. We saw his jump from coordinator to head coach succeed very quickly, and now we're going to see hopefully a head coach to head coach jump be successful for him as well. Like Josh said, when he was the offensive coordinator at Arizona State, we saw him for a few years, or 1 year, right? It was only 1 year we saw him at ASU. Yeah, because what was it? Manny had 4-0 season, 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's got to be fun for a quarterback. Anyways, Lyle says on Billy Napier, he's a good coach, and at a 40-12 record is nothing to look down on. I think there probably should have been one more step along the way for him before a big SEC school like this. I think that pretty much sums up all of it and say.
Yeah. But it'll be exciting to see. I mean, hopefully he's able to thrive there. Hopefully he could turn Florida around. Here's a fun one, guys. This comes from Ryan Fast and Ferias. How about Dan Lanning to Oregon? He put the cherry on top of his resume with that game he called against Alabama for the Natty. This was another interesting one. I mean, there were rumors that Chip Kelly was going to be leaving UCLA to go back to Oregon. And the funny thing is, everyone thought it was going to be a great hire, but the only people that didn't were Oregon fans. They were all going, no, please, God, no, we don't want him to come back. And this was kind of an under the radar, just kind of out of left field, but really good hire. So they get one of the best defensive minds in all of college football. Fairly young too. I think he's in his young to mid 30s, if that. So he's a young guy. This Oregon team isn't the team that it was, a decade ago when they were running off 10 plays per 60 seconds. What are you guys' thoughts about Oregon going this direction, bringing in a new time head coach with such a strong defensive presence?
Yeah, he's 35. So I think it's kind of similar. I'm not comparing this hire to the Lincoln Riley hire, but I think you definitely like getting a younger coach, a progressive, a forward-thinking coach in Dan Lanning. I think it's a great hire. I do think, losing somebody like Cristobal is big time, and you have to figure out somebody to replace him with. Here's why this is such a good hire, in my opinion. Forget about Dan Lanning and everything that he just accomplished, and especially with how young he is and how forward-thinking he is, like I said. The first 2 coaches they were tied to were Justin Wilcox and Chip Kelly. I understand Chip Kelly was the man and brought Oregon, into the spotlight and when he was there the first time. But what have those 2 guys accomplished in the last 5 years? Why were they both offered? Maybe not offered. Why were they both tied to the Oregon job? Why was Justin Wilcox offered the Oregon job? That is absolutely bonkers. Okay, but we'll get there. That's why I think that this hire is so impressive, because look at the other guys that they were just tied to, and then they went out and got Dan Lanning. I think that's why it's so impressive, because I think Lanning is a slam dunk hire. Where would I rate it compared to some of the other ones? It does not compete with with Lincoln Riley. It doesn't compete with Miami. It doesn't compete with Oklahoma, but it's up there. I think it's a great hire, and especially when you consider who else they were tied to.
Brady, did Lyle have anything to say about the Dan Lanning move?
Of course he did. Come on. He said he'll be good for a couple years, but Lyle says this hire screams, I'm going to run back to the SEC as soon as a job opens. I don't think he'll stay in Eugene for very long.
Yeah. I think so as well, but we'll see. We can kind of use the carousel to go on this one. There wasn't a comment on it, but we'll connect to it. Mario Cristobal, he leaves Oregon and he goes to Miami, back where he played. I believe he played there with The Rock many years ago. So Mario Cristobal, who was he did the job at Oregon, but he's not one of those guys where you think of like top 5 to 10 coaches in the country. He immediately comes to mind. He's fine for what he does, but he goes back to Miami. Huge get for them. Again, he was great with Oregon. Is he going to be the guy to turn things around with the Hurricanes?
Let me just say, I think everything about Mario Cristobal just screams Miami Hurricanes. I think it's a perfect hire. And like I alluded to earlier, like this is one of those hires that, sorry for Oregon fans, is just a reminder, like Miami is still Miami. Even when they're struggling, and they have been, even when they've been competitive, that program has been a dumpster fire in recent years. It's been chaos. And this is exactly who they need. This is the hire that I think will turn things around fairly quickly. It's a hire that fits perfectly for the university, for the program, for the city. And it also is a reminder that the Miami Hurricanes are still the Miami Hurricanes. So it's a great hire. I'm excited to see what he'll do. I wish that he had stayed in the Pac-12. Of course, that means we don't get Dan Lanning, but man, Riley versus Cristobal in the North and South every year would be awesome. But yeah, I think it's a great hire for Miami. I don't know if the turnaround's going to be immediate, but I think within a couple years, Miami's going to get back to at least close to where they expect to be.
I'm going to throw Short Round's comment up here while I talk about this too. Short Round says Mario goes home. Literally, he's got a bunch of family there. Good for him. I'm not saying this is a feel-good hire like that Miami did this because of that, but it is a feel-good story. It's one of those full circle stories, kind of how, sort of like when Scott Frost went back to Nebraska a few years ago. Granted, he hasn't panned out to be all that he was, but just saying it's a similar story. When that happened, we were like, this is cool. He played quarterback there. Now he's back in Nebraska being the head coach. He was a team captain. It's all full circle. I think the same goes for Mario Cristobal here, going back to Miami. He's always sort of had that connection back to the Hurricanes, and I think this is a really good spot for him. So I'm excited to see what Mario can do there. But, like you said, Josh, it would have been fun to see him a few more years in the Pac-12 up there at Oregon. But, as soon as he was there, I think this was the stepping stone for him to get to Miami, and I think he jumped on that as quickly as he could.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'm just going to quickly rattle off a few, then we can get to Josh's closing statements as the Grandmaster Roast General Josh Schaefer, giving his thoughts on a head coach and why it might be the worst deal in the history of college football. We'll start things off with Hawaii. Former head coach Todd Graham is no longer there for many reasons, but they go to Timmy Chang, who is one of the more successful quarterbacks in Hawaii history. Like it, don't like it? Immediate thoughts?
Why not? It's another one of those stories where it's like, all right, you got a guy who seems to be a pretty forward-thinking offensive coach. Why not? It's got a legacy there.
How long ago was he at Hawaii when he played there?
I want to say like 15 years ago. I think he was before Cole Brennan. Yeah. I think.
We're seeing this trend in football. We've seen it for years of players becoming coaches. It's pretty common, but we're seeing this trend of recent players becoming coaches, right? So if you look at the NFL right now, or like who's one of the hottest commodities, Byron Leftwich, who was a quarterback 6-7 years ago in the NFL, and he's now going to become a head coach most likely in this coaching carousel. So we're seeing this a lot. I don't think it'll be the same for college guys 4 or 5 years out of college, but 10, 15 years, that's still a pretty quick turnaround to be back as a head coach. So I really like the way this cycle is going in football, all levels of college and pro, of how we're seeing recently retired, recently finished playing players or guys that were semi-successful or had good careers come back into coaching. So I really like this hire from Hawaii, and I'm not real proud of what Todd Graham did there. Not real proud.
We'll do one final one, staying in the Pac-12. Jimmy Lake, the experience did not work there. It was not successful. They bring in Kalen DeBoer, the Fresno State head coach, who has had a lot of success recently at Fresno State. So again, Washington, not a top 10 destination, but certainly one of the better destinations. And they go with a Group of 5 program in Fresno State, but for a team like Washington, who was in the college football playoff a couple of years ago, has seen a lot of success, kind of a few down years. Thoughts on just going that route, bringing in Fresno State's head coach?
I think it's a good hire. I think Fresno State was especially very competitive, and obviously you saw Jake Haener was really good this last year and entered the portal when DeBoer left, and he's now back at Fresno State. So good for Jake Haener, but I just think that's kind of the influence that this guy had, especially coming from a Group of 5 program. Fresno State's one of those programs that's either really good or pretty mediocre. And that's kind of the way that some of those Mountain West teams have been recently, where San Diego State's really good or they're struggling, something like that. So we'll see. I think it's a good hire, and maybe can get Washington a little more on track.
I would equate that real quick. Like I would equate that one directly to what we saw with Napier going from Louisiana to Florida, going from a pretty decent Group of 5 team to, I'm not saying Florida and Washington are head to head the same, but I would say Washington's an upper tiered team in college football. So it's a jump like that. And I hope, we can see more successful jumps like that instead of having to go step by step by step by step. If you believe in them, go for them. And if they don't work, they don't work, but take a shot. What's the worst Washington's going to do? Fire another coach after a year?
I guess that's it. All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up right now with our final segment of the night. We pitched it last week. We pitched it earlier in the show, but it's time for Grandmaster General Josh Schaefer to roast a current Pac-12 head coach. Now, I know what you're thinking. Which Pac-12 coach is out there that he could be roasting? I don't know. So, Josh, Grandmaster General, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Well, guys, recently, Cal decided to extend Justin Wilcox until 2027. This is the second extension he's received. So he's supposed to be on contract until like 24, 25. They just extended him to 2027 based off of can't figure it out. Cannot for the life of me figure out why the college football world, mostly Cal and Oregon, have been so hot on Justin Wilcox. And I have my research, and I decided to handwrite it so that I had documentation of all this. We don't want anything getting lost, in my files on the computer. We want the hard copy of why I don't know what Cal's doing. I don't get it. Signed an extension until 2027. He turned down the Oregon job. I don't know why. Can't figure that out either. They had to have offered him. They had to have said, will you come coach us for free, bro? Because I can't figure out why he wouldn't leave Cal for Oregon.
Now, really quickly, though, about Wilcox, he was born and raised in Eugene, attended Oregon, played there for 4 years, and was offered to be the head coach for the Oregon Ducks. But he turned it down to go back to Cal, where he's had so much success.
And his reason was like, well, like, I'm just really confident about what we're building at Cal. And it's like, dude, do they have dirt on you? Like, what's going on here? And then they extend him. Cal has, just for what it's worth, he alluded to going to the Rose Bowl. Good luck. Cal hasn't appeared in a Rose Bowl since 1958. Overall, he is 26-28 at Cal. And you know what that screams to me? Extension until 2027. He was 5-7 last year. This extension comes after a 5-7 season. But, guys, don't forget, he led them to winning seasons and bowl games in 2018 and 2019 for the first time in a decade, right? Incredible. Those winning seasons were 7-6 and 8-5. He's won. Oh, but the other big thing, and a friend of mine who I work with, who's a Berkeley grad, says, well, he's won 2 of the last 3 games against Stanford. He's beaten them twice. Cool. Those wins were against a 3-9 Stanford team and a 4-8 Stanford team. If you think beating that level program is the measuring post, like what? It doesn't make any sense. Like, yes, ASU beating U of A 5 years in a row is impressive, but like, oh, well, we've won 5 of the last 7 or whatever. U of A sucks. I'm sorry. Like, great, you're winning. But that's the same thing about ASU football. It's like, oh, at least U of A lost today. That you shouldn't be measuring to U of A. Just like Cal should not be measuring to Stanford at this point in college football. That's a joke. That's a joke of a measuring stick, okay? It makes absolutely no sense. He's beat USC twice, though. That's something that they have not done since like 2002. So good for them. He beat USC twice. But the 2 wins that he has against USC are the program's 2 worst seasons in 30 years. They were 4-8 this year. They beat USC the last game of the season when half the Trojans team wasn't even playing. And a couple years ago, they beat them when they were terrible as well and had all those injuries. So it's like, all right, you beat USC, you beat Stanford. Those 2 teams combined, the 2 years that you beat them, like 7 wins combined. Not very impressive. And then you look at the teams that I think Cal would call they're like rivals. You've got your in-state rivals, UCLA, Stanford, USC, and then your out-of-state rival, the team that you're going to compete with in the North every year is Oregon, right? Since he's been there, he's 1-4 against UCLA. He's 2-3 against Stanford, who's been horrible the last 5 years. He's 2-2 against USC. They didn't play in the COVID-shortened season. They're 1-4 against Oregon. Their 2 wins against USC were in their 2 worst seasons in 30 years. And in the games that they've lost to UCLA, UCLA has been 8-4. That was this year. And in the other 3 losses, UCLA was 3-4, 3-9, and 4-5. Those are bad losses. On top of that, it's like, all right, so recruiting-wise, like he's got to be recruiting at an elite level, at least for Cal standards. This year, they're 7th in the Pac-12. That's below the halfway mark. Next year, I know we're looking a little down the road here. Not one commit. They don't have one commit. Lyle Goldstein says, you stay out of this, Lyle. You stay out of this.
Let your voice be heard, Lyle.
Last year, they were a very respectable 3rd in the Pac-12. And it's because they had 15 3-stars. It was just a numbers game. Like, they just had more commits than anyone else. They didn't have any big recruits who paid off yet. They were just 3rd because they had some of the most commits in the Pac-12. In 2020, they were 8th. And that was because they had 25 3-star commits. In 2019, they were 8th with 23 3-star commits. And then 28, he wouldn't have recruited in 2018, even though his first season was 2018. And then I just think that this is super interesting as well, because it's like, well, he's putting people in the seats right now. In the last 5 years, they rank 9th in the Pac-12 in attendance, above Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. Congrats. Washington State still brings more fans to the games, likely, on average. They just play in a stadium that holds 25,000 people. They just can't fill up the Memorial Stadium in Berkeley. They also ranked 48th out of 64 Power 5 teams at the time. We talk about UCLA being bad. They also have a filled stadium capacity that is ranked 12th in the Pac-12 over the last 5 years. They trailed UCLA by 1 percentage point, and the rest of the Pac-12 by 10 percentage points at least in the conference. No one goes to the games because they're not good. There hasn't been much of a silver lining with them recruiting-wise or development-wise. He's had 2 winning seasons when they were barely above 500, and by extending him to 2027, that will make him the longest tenured coach in Cal Golden Bears history, along with Jeff Tedford. In Cal Bears history. And he has accomplished south of nothing. I don't get it. I genuinely don't understand. And I'm all here for fielding arguments, for anybody giving me a reason why. I can't figure it out. Because and you go back to his time as a coordinator. When he was at USC, USC's defense was not good. And he went up and became the head coach at Cal right afterwards. I just don't understand like what it is. And I think he recruited fairly well at USC, but he has not recruited well at Cal, and it has not paid off for him, and there's been no results.
I think you mentioned it. I think there's some dirt on him, and the Cal said, all right, you go to Oregon. This dirt's going to get out. And that's the reason. And to thank you, we'll extend you through 2027. So there's the roast from Grandmaster Roast General Josh Schaefer. Brady, just quick thoughts, takeaways from he had some pretty good notes he jotted down there.
Yeah, the one thing called Josh a different name every time you introduced him. Roast John Master General Ross Josh Jeff
John.
every time. John, James, Jacob, Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Grand
What's
Roast
the
Marshal General
Yes, the pot roast Master General
Jeff Ross.
Dude, love Jeff Ross. What was the Lyle saying? He like, scroll up and put that one on screen. I scrolled up. I didn't see any more from Lyle.
Yeah,
so
I don't know what Lyle's doing.
cheese and rice,
Cheese and
Lyle.
rice.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the comment section. So, Josh, we
Hey, big Seattle E
appreciate
fan.
your thoughts and comments on Justin Wilcox because it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why you'd extend him maybe a year, but not through 2027 when you've literally accomplished nothing. An 8-win season.
Like they had already extended him. I don't remember what the exact number was, so I almost don't want to say it, but I believe that he was making more each year. And his original contract, which was until I believe 2024, 2025, he was making like something that put him like not super far off from like the top 30 in the country. And for the life of me, I couldn't find it. I believe his contract will be announced at some point, or how much his earnings and salary are going to be, because Berkeley is a state university. That's public knowledge, which is why like you could look up Jim Mora's salary from a couple of years ago. He was the highest paid employee in the state of California. So, yes,
yes, love this, Lyle.
So yeah, Lyle couldn't be with us, but he's still watching and he's still interacting in the comment section,
and he's still in our hearts.
Hey, Lyle, donate to the super chat if you want to be on the show, buddy. Come on.
Go Lancers, Lyle. Go Lancers.
Lyle, if you missed it, Brady had a beautiful rendition of how you speak and read comments. He did it perfectly.
Hello, Chris?
Hello? So the one thing about Wilcox, though, is yes, you get the extension amid a mediocre season. Didn't Michigan do that to Jim Harbaugh, though, like 2 years ago?
But he was having winning seasons.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe next year I'll say that Cal doesn't make a bowl game and it won't be a hot take, and then they'll just go off because we saw that I clearly reverse psychology Jim Harbaugh this year.
It's going to be fantastic when Cal goes 9-3 next season.
Well, you remember, okay, I'm not going to say the outlet, but I've already alluded to this several times.
Yeah.
Like last year, the year before, a certain very legitimate sports media outlet predicted Cal to go like 11-1 and win the Pac-12, and I'm like 99% sure they finished 5-7 that year.
Does it rhyme with Delta?
No. It's one of the stations that has a B and a C in the 3-letter sign there.
Gosh. Well, hey,
WBC, World Broadcast.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yes.
We'll have to wait and see. But that does wrap up our coaching show. And now we're talking of just coaches. Who would have thought? Who would have thought we'd get to this point? Next week, though, or the following week, depending on people's schedules, that's going to be a fun one. The transfer portal. Hopefully there's a few more additions that we can talk about. But at this rate, likely not. But hey, stranger things have happened. So stay tuned for that. You can follow the show on Twitter at the @show_. That way you can know when we're going to be having our next show. Again, we're going to be talking about all things transfers, talking about the transfer portal, what it means for college football, our thoughts on it. Do we like it? Do we hate it? And where all the top players in college football have transferred this offseason. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Guys, any parting words before we head out for the weekend? Who do we like this weekend?
I, a Rams fan, is nervous. Very. I think it's going to be very hard to beat the Rams 3 times, though. So I'm going to take the Rams, and unfortunately, not because I dislike the Chiefs or anything, I'm just kind of rooting for Cincinnati. I think the Chiefs win, so I'm taking Rams and Chiefs.
Same here, Rams, Chiefs. I'd love to see Cincy, though. That's just such a cool story, if so.
Yeah, I'd like to see Cincy, but I got the Chiefs. I got the Niners. For some reason, Shanahan just has McVay's
Blake,
number.
you're off the show.
Brandon Ayuk game-winning touchdown. from Debo
Yeah.
I mean,
Samuel.
the thing you have to take into account is it's probably going to be like 75% Niners fans at SoFi.
Yeah. I mean,
the last thing I read something today, I think it was like 72% of StubHub tickets purchases have come from Northern California.
yeah, that's just what's scary is the whole them trying to like make it for LA fans is just making people from the Bay want to come down more. But it is worth pointing out, like, LA didn't have a team for 20 years. So, I mean, there were a lot of fan bases here, but where did all of those fans go? Raiders, Cowboys, because they've had camp here forever out in Thousand Oaks, and Niners, because they were all close by. So that's where all those fans went.
Right.
So it's not even like they're all driving down. They're just here. Like LA, there's just a lot of Niners fans. But what bothers me is they're the same Niners fans that are also like Dodgers and Lakers fans. So like that's what bothers me personally.
And Cowboys and Duke and Yankees and
but I mean, it is what it is. I just hope that it's not totally red, and I don't think it will be as bad as it was before. Honestly, I think people will show up. Like the
How about
Rams have
this?
been getting good crowds, so
Yeah.
just not when it's like the Niners.
how about
And
this?
Brady, you're going to be at Circa. Lucky.
I maybe Circa. I'm gonna swing by. I'm gonna be in Vegas this weekend. It was Mason's 21st birthday on Monday, so heading out to Vegas tomorrow for the weekend.
Please
hate
give Circa
Mason.
my best.
I will. Also, the
I like
Bengals have been to 2 Super Bowls in their career.
In their career.
They've in their franchise history.
And they're around part NFL
Yes.
stuff.
Yes. Both Super Bowls they have played the 49. Will be 3.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. Hey, tell your
Well-
dog to shut up.
Yeah, well, since
My God, is
Peely's
that Peely?
barking- That's Peely.
Tell her I said, hey, she'll know what it means.
Will do. Well, that does wrap up this edition of the Harris Highlight Show. Make sure to follow us on
What it
Twitter.
means.
Stay up to date with that. Again, transfer show coming the next week or two, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Caleb to Wisconsin.
For Josh Schaefer, Brady Klain, and Lyle Goldstein's personal reader, this has been Blake Harris from the Chateau in beautiful Monrovia, California. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in our future show. Don't know when, but stay tuned.